Last week I showed you how I created this design, and yes, unfortunately it fell off the wall. I need to get me some stronger sticky tapes. Angela asked if I could show you how I created some of these details, so this is what today's video is all about. Welcome back to another Doodler tutorial. My name is Ken and I'm here to teach you all about digitizing and embroidery. If you have never digitized in your life before, don't worry, because this app is all about being creative without needing to know all the complexities about professional digitizing. We'll link the Design Doodler down in the description, and thank you so much for all your support. Last week I used an image from Unsplash to create that painting, so I thought for today's example we'd also use something similar. I found this beautiful picture by Midi. Thank you so much to the creator. I already downloaded it, and all I'm gonna do is open the Design Doodler. Now, if you already have the Design Doodler and would like a full walkthrough of the application, then click the link up here, because John Deere goes through it all really well. The first thing I'm gonna do is switch back to my hoop, because the last thing I did was use the 300 by 300 millimeters, and that is a little bit too big. I don't need that anymore because I will be utilizing the mighty hoop for this little test example that we're gonna do. And I will select the 100 by 100. That is the 4x4, so that should be pretty good. Let me see the hoop. Perfect. So now we can bring in the image by clicking the image button right here, go under photo library, and I'm gonna select that one, click done, and we can resize this image. Now I'm not gonna do all 4 windows because that would take forever, but I am gonna show you how I would create one of these windows. We're gonna use a couple of the tools that are available, and you guys can see how easy it is to create that effect. I'm just gonna turn down the opacity a little bit. I think something like that for that example is pretty good. Awesome. So I'm just going to select it one more time, turn up the opacity a little bit, and we can zoom in by clicking the zoom tool. Awesome. For this image, I utilized a couple of tools, and that was the single stitch tool, which is this one right here, as well as this one, which I consider the satin tool. And the most important thing that I used to create straight lines was the line tool right here. So I'm going to click on that, and right here you can choose the width of that satin stitch. So for example, if I wanted to be really thick, then I would click on that one, and I just click, hold, and drag, and you can see that it created that line. That's a little bit too much in my opinion, so I'm probably gonna go for something like this as an example, and you can see how easy it was to create a straight line. Then I can click on the next one and on the next one, and I just click, hold, and drag down to create that. You'll see this is how I pretty much create the whole thing for the window. We're gonna return, we're gonna delete everything, and we can get started with the design. For designs like this, the way in which I like to create them is I like to work from the top to the bottom. So for example, if we were to pick this window right here, I see that the black color, although in reality that's a shadow, I still will consider it to be at the top. So I would want to create all of these shadows, all of these lines if possible, depending on how much detail we're trying to add. And then at the end, I would create the base of the blue. You know what? Let's get started with this window. I kind of have an idea now. I'm just going to click undo, go back 1 to 1, and let's start zooming in a little bit. How about we create this window first? I'm actually gonna do the single stitch because I want to do the whole surrounding area. And I'm just going to switch to the line so that I make sure that it is straight. I'm going to click and drag, click and drag, and if you see that the circle becomes red, that means that it's going to continue from that little corner. Oh, I forgot to get my glove. We're back. Okay, this one is honestly such an amazing tool. Highly suggest if you guys have an iPad and you're digitizing with it, just get yourselves one of these. That way the screen won't recognize your hand by accident. I'm just gonna continue from here, go around that, go around there. And then what I like to do, because I feel like sometimes just one single stitch isn't enough, I'm going to return it the same way that I just brought it. This isn't necessary. This is just a little more technical in the digitizing world, but there is really no necessity to do this. I just prefer it because the design would look a little more solid. And one more step is, before I even continue just going all the way back to the start, what I'm going to do is I am actually going to bring the shape down there, and I will switch to the satin width, because what I want to do, oh, that's a little too thick. I want to continue this without the machine having to jump. And honestly, at the end of the day, you can even just branch the whole thing. but I am someone who enjoys manually branching, if that makes any sense. Not to confuse you guys at all, okay? And then I will just go back here, go to the next one, bring it all the way back here, and let's create it, switch back to the other tool, bring it from there to the end. The way in which I see digitizing and the way in which I see embroidery is we're working from one single thread all the time, okay? So if you know that you have one thread, this means that you're trying to find the best ways for that single stitch to connect continuously so that the machine doesn't have to trim, cut, and then go to the next one. This is what makes some embroidery designs take longer if it's constantly jumping. But if you're a beginner, don't worry about this. Honestly, concentrate on creating the shapes first, and then you can branch it at the end of the day. And then once you become a little bit more advanced on digitizing, then you can start looking into the idea of manual branching and just connecting it all together. We also have a lot of digitizing education on the website, so make sure you guys click the link if you're interested. You guys saw that I just continued with the same, just switching back and forth of the single stitch and the satin stitch to create something like this. Let me disable 1-to-1. Just zoom in a little bit like this, enable the 3D, and it looks something like that. And now this design is going to stitch all in one go without the machine having to stop, trim, go to the next one, stop, trim, go to the next one, and so forth. At the end of the day, it's going to save a lot of time, but it is definitely tricky and not always necessary, especially if you're a beginner. Okay, let's do the next one, and I'll just show you without me talking how I would create this. Let's go, zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to do exactly what I just did. 2, 3, 4, and then return 1, because I want that single stitch outline to look a little bit thicker. I'm gonna switch to that one, go to this one, the next one right here, because I don't want this design to be jumping or trimming or anything. I want to try and connect it as best as I can, just because I have been used to doing this manually in other programs. So we get this one. If you guys have any questions or are feeling confused so far with this tutorial, please leave it down in the comments, because I'm always trying to read them, and I can either reply with a comment as well, or I can show you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you so much to Angela for recommending this, because I was super excited when I read it, and I immediately turned on the camera to record this video. You can see very simply, I'm just switching back and forth. Bada bing. And then the last one right there. And then just close it up. That's it. Let's go 1-to-1. I want to zoom in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable the view slowed redraw so you guys can see what this looks like. So let's go back to the beginning. You can see it's going to, let's enable the 3D. It's going to do the first one, and then it does a stitch. Then it goes to the next one, stitch. Then it's going to go to the next one, stitch. All in one go. If the settings are correct, then these stitches should not be jumping at all, and instead they should all be connecting together to create the whole shape. Awesome, I can get rid of view slow redraw because I don't need it anymore, and now I can create the rest of the window. Let's take care of the window now. I'm going to select one of these colors, something similar to that. Let's see. It doesn't have to be that specific. I'll just choose 33. And for this, what I'm going to do is I will pick the satin tool, and we're gonna do exactly what we just did. You know what? Let's make it a little bit thicker. Maybe this one right here. Is that good? Yeah, that one's pretty nice. Go there. Now this one on the iPad is a little trickier to connect, but I've noticed that as long as I'm trying to estimate it as best as possible, it will connect like so. So you can see that. And then right here, I can just select this and bring it a little bit more like that to the end. Cool. Now that is just the outline. We still have to do the inside. And to do the inside, what I like to do is I click this one, which is more of a tatami base. This is for when you do fills. So you can see right here, I'm going to create with a free hand a little bit of a fill. Now you can see how hard it is to do it that way. So I'm gonna show you another way to create that fill right now. I'm going to undo to delete that. Let's move this around so you guys can see it. Is it clearly, or should I switch to another color? I'm gonna switch to a darker color so you guys can see that, because I think it's a little too hard to see with that light blue. Just as an example, let's pick the purple. That should be easier to see. You saw that me creating this tatami base, you could try your best, but you can see that it's really hard to get in the middle of that outline to create the fill. So an easier way that I found is I like to click this fill tool and then I switch to this square right here. Now with this square, I click, hold, and drag with a pencil until I get there. And then I like to select that area. I'm going to bring this down to about there. I'm going to bring this up to around there so that it fills up both areas. And then we're gonna click this tool right here to simply drag this point up, whoops. And then we drag this point, move out of the way. And then we drag that point down like so. And then last thing, of course, we're gonna change the angle of this like so. Again, it's pretty hard to see because of the color, but let's switch back to the light blue so you guys can see what that looks like. 33 should be fine, maybe even 38, a little bit darker. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, and of course we can't see the black because the black is underneath. So under the sequence view, which is right here, we're gonna bring this back. And now you can see that it's more of a window. We did the front first and then the back. Let's enable the photo so we can see what's happening. And then it really depends here whether you want to look really realistic, but to save time on this tutorial, I'm going to select everything. I am going to duplicate this by pressing copy and then paste. And then I'm going to move this over here like so. Disable the 3D so it's faster to make adjustments. I'm just gonna place it right there and then I'm gonna click and drag to change the angle of this. Now, of course, it's not perfect because of the angle of this image, but I'm just gonna do it my best I can. If you really want to, you can go in and change a little bit of those corners, but for the sake of this tutorial, we're gonna leave it like that for now. Now we're gonna utilize the same tools and the same steps for the window, but I will be doing something slightly different, and that is I'm going to save this plant at the end so we don't have to keep changing the layers like crazy. For now, we're gonna do the whole window area, and at the end, maybe we'll add a couple of those details up here and down there. Let's switch back to the satin width tool, and I'm going to put it back in line. And what I'll do is create these inside parts of the window first, okay? So I'm going to, gotta change the color. Change the color back to white. Awesome. And then for this one, we're gonna create it slightly smaller. So let's create these small parts first. I'm going to switch here just so that I can connect the next part. Let's go back here and let's do that right there. Awesome. Let's go up, and this is exactly the same thing that I did to create the other windows on the design that I showed you guys last week. I spent quite a bit of time just testing things out, see what worked best, and unfortunately I did make a couple of mistakes where I duplicated certain things that I didn't mean to duplicate. So if you guys haven't seen that video, make sure to go watch it so you guys can see the whole process on how this was done. Now this window, I am gonna move it a little bit more that way. I know there really isn't any white here. I think it's overtaken by that window, but for the sake of this tutorial, I am going to show that aspect. And is it there? Is that the end? I want to see view entry and exit. I think that's the exit right there. We can even enable these. We can enable the view outlines if you want as well. If you click on the settings, you can open up a bunch of them. And so far, I don't really see that many trims. Let me disable the 3D and let me disable the image. As you can see, so far we only noticed a couple of trims here, a couple of jumps and trims there, which means that we're doing a pretty good job at connecting everything we can. Oh, I accidentally moved all these parts of the window. So to fix that quickly, I'm just going to go under the layers and select all of those areas of the bottom part of the window so that I can put it back in its place, which should take like a second, just right there. Perfect. No problem. Let's get back with the window part, turn on the image, and we left off right here, but we don't need to trim. So the next thing we're gonna do is switch back to the satin tool. Actually, let's switch back to the pen tool, bring it down here. Let's back to the satin width, because now we're going to create these two like so. 1 and 2. Cool. And now I do want to do a slightly thicker version, so we're gonna do 3 in a slightly thicker one like so. Yeah, that should be pretty good. Then what we'll do is switch back to the single stitch, go all the way here. This thing that I'm doing right now is a little bit more advanced. You don't have to worry about switching back and forth, but I just wanted to show you a clear example of how it is that I did it in the version of the video. I want to make sure that it connects. There we go, connected. And go all the way to the bottom and connected. And for this one, I want it to go like that. Awesome, that is perfect. Now we can take off the image and you can see that the window is now built. Now it is currently up here, but as we start creating more shapes, we're gonna bring it all to the bottom. Let's actually do that right now. So we're gonna bring it back underneath the windows. Perfect. Now let's enable back the image. And for the glass, it's pretty simple. What we're gonna do is use the same tool. So I'm gonna use the fill tool and I'm going to switch with the fill tool to the square. And in the square, I'm going to create a couple of them like so. Whoops, actually, before we do that, let's change the color. Disable the 3D so it's easier to see. And let's put on black. Awesome. We're gonna do a slight overlap, so it's kind of in the middle of the white. And that is so that when the stitches are pulling each other, there is no gaps in between your design. So let me select this. One, and just bring it there. Cool. I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste and I'm going to bring it around there. Then again, copy, paste, bring it down here, change it a little bit. Cool. We're going to copy, paste, put it right there, grab that one, copy, paste, and we're gonna change the order in a minute. Okay, so the order is pretty important, again, so that we avoid any jumping of this design. Let's see what that looks like. Now we can change the angle if we want, because some of these went like that. So if you just want it to be horizontal, like so, we're gonna change the angle of them. That's cool. I'm going to click on the windows. So let's go all the way down to where the windows are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can go under settings, and under the settings, I'm going to change the density to 0.7. You can leave it at 0.4. 0.4 is a solid stitch. I just don't want it to be so solid for this example. I'm gonna enable the perpendicular underlay. I just like having a perpendicular so that it helps the stitch to stay still. And we can change the fill pattern, and I'm gonna change it to smooth. Here are a few different fill patterns. Highly suggest you play with all of them so you can see which one you like best. And you can see that it's at the top, but before we move it to the back, or actually, let's move it to the back. We're gonna move all of these windows all the way to the back. So I selected all of them, click back, and they should be at the bottom now. Last thing, before we move on from these windows, is we're gonna set the order. So that one is right here. I actually want this one to be the first one. Then this one, I want this one to be the second one. So I'm gonna, first one is down there, right? Second one, which one is the third one? This one, okay. So I have to move it to number 3, cool. Then fourth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this one should be 6 now. Perfect. Awesome. So now they're in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the reason I did that is because what I want to do is select the start and stop. If you don't see the start and stop, make sure that you enable the commands for view entry and exit. And then when you click here to change the points, you will see a red thing. Well, no problem. Just move it around. The green is start and the red is stop. So I'm just moving the green so that it's closest to where this next one is starting. This is so the program tells the machine, hey, these 2 stitches are super close, therefore we don't have to cut and trim because it's the next shape. Instead, we're just gonna do a little jump and then go to the next shape. It's going to save a lot of time, I promise you guys. You can see it's stopping there, so that means that the next one I have to move here, but I have to move the stop down there. Same thing, I want to start as close as I can to where the last one stopped, and I'm going to move the next one there. Start, and we can make sure that that one stops right there. Let's see how that looks when we actually stitch it out. Same thing, view, slow redraw, and you will see that now it's doing the bottom one, and there is absolutely no jumping or cutting until the end. That is what I want, okay? Perfect. Let's enable that. Let's enable the 3D, and we can stop the view slow redraw. Cool. Let's move this around. So you always want to disable 3D if you're moving stuff around, just because the iPad isn't as strong. And that looks pretty nice, actually. That's looking a lot like a window. But we're missing a couple little details, and I think we're gonna add those now. Open up the image again. You can see we got this down here, and we also have the flower pot. The way in which I did the flower pot, and I'm going to show you exactly how I did it in that video, is that I selected a color. Let's just pick a different one so that it doesn't combine to the one below. Let's do a dark gray. And for this one, I simply used a free draw. Now again, you can use the square, you can use anything you want, but for this one, I decided to use a free draw, and I'm just going to create a little pot like this. Now I'm just gonna change the angle of that pot, or a vase. I don't know what you call it. It can be whatever you want, honestly. Cool, something like that. And then I'm going to add some flowers. Now these flowers are orange, so we gotta follow what the design looks like. I'm going to add a couple of flowers here. One there, another one here. I'm exaggerating because I don't want it to be so small. Instead, I kind of want it to be like, oh, there's more flowers. It's the design. Start, stop. We're always trying to move it as close as possible so that it doesn't jump. Instead, it just stays the same. And again, we change the angle of things to make it more interesting, like so. I'm going to click here, and for these, we're going to change a couple settings. Collapse all. I'm going to select these, go under settings, change the density to whatever random one I get right now. 1.4, cool. We'll leave it at 1.4. Fill pattern, let's choose a nice, not satin, maybe like a pattern 2. I think a pattern 2 would be pretty good. Same thing with this. Oh, that might be a little too much spacing. You can see it's a little too spaced out. So let's bring it back down just slightly. Let's leave it at 1. I think 1 is a pretty good spacing. And then the gray, what are we gonna do with the gray? We're gonna probably do like a 0.7. 0.7 should be good. Fill pattern, let's do like a satin. Would a satin look pretty good? And if we're doing a satin, then we're gonna probably put it at a 0.5. 0.4 is the regular density for embroidery, if you didn't know that yet. Last thing, you're probably wondering about this yellow down here. I remember, don't worry guys. Okay, we're gonna do one simple tool for that. We're gonna select back to the orange. We'll stay with the same orange, because why not? Aren't you glad you've been watching this tutorial all along? And if you have been, make sure you subscribe to the legacy. Okay, I'm going to start by creating this. Oi, not like that. We need the line, that's right. We need the line. And what I'll do is I'll create the top one. Awesome. We have to learn how to simplify things, guys. You know, we can't overcomplicate ourselves too much with embroidery, because it should be fun, it should be easy, you know? So for this, what I'll do is I'm just going to add a simple zigzag because I want it to be a little more dense, and the stitch width is fine. The density, we're gonna change it to 0.5. We can even add some underlays. Normally I like adding underlays on the PC after I've digitized most of it on the iPad, and that's just to make sure that I did everything correctly. But for this tutorial, we can actually do it on the iPad. Somewhere where I like to add underlays would be the white. So I'm going to select on them. Let's see if I can, it lets me add underlays. Underlays, awesome, zigzag underlay, perfect. And then for the windows, I'm going to open these two. I'm going to select the two windows. Let's add a simple perpendicular. Awesome, now that I've added those, I can deselect them, and I can select these two settings, and for these, I'm going to add a quick zigzag. Awesome. And are we missing anything else? By the way, if you guys are seeing that your design starts stitching out on your machine from the corner, or it's like selecting the center as the corner, that's pretty an easy fix. Just make sure you enable center design start and stop. And if you find that it's already enabled, just try disabling it. Go back to settings and then enable it again, and it should fix itself, okay? And boom, we got ourselves a pretty nice window. And you know what, guys? Now that I'm seeing this 3D, I may have just made a mistake. You guys see that this is on top of the outline. I actually want this to be underneath. So all I'll do is move it down, and we have no need for this one. It has 0 stitches. So we're simply going to delete that. I'm going to do the same thing with that one, move it up like so. And this one, we can delete it. Now you'll see that the base, which is this one right here, is underneath the outline. And that, guys, is pretty much how I created those windows. Now always make sure to save. So we're gonna click save. We're gonna do window, windows. Okay, and to export this file, you want to click on the Files app on the iPad, and on the iPad, you're going to click on Locations to the left. On my iPad, you click the Design Doodlers, and you will see the file now .jds that says Windows. I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to click Share. Under Share, you can choose your email, or you can use your G drive to send it to your PC, and from your PC you import it and export it as the file that you need. So for example, you may need PES for your brother machine, whereas I need DST for my industrial machine. Let's do a test and I'll show you what it looks like in the end. And there you go, guys. Here is the final look of the design. Look at how cute it is. I forgot to check the size and I've realized it was a lot tinier than I was expecting. Here, I'm gonna zoom in so you guys can check it out. That's what the window looks like, and that's the end. Note right here, you can see at the bottom that there is a spacing, and the reason is because the stitches of the blue base are going down, up and down, instead of sideways like they are here. This caused the stitch to pull and have that spacing issue. If I were to change the angle of the base to go horizontally, then that issue wouldn't happen. Make sure you guys join our Digitizing Made Easy education so you learn all about this. And I know I said I was gonna make some orange flowers, but I just thought I want some roses for today and I get to do whatever I want. Using these simple methods is how I was able to create these kinds of windows. It just takes a little bit of practice to learn some of the tools, but as you create more designs, you can get even more complex and create true masterpieces on the Doodler. Thanks so much for watching, Legacy family, and click this video here to keep on the playlist going of Digitizing. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.